Tano Sports Central will be over our next team projection of this offseason, and it's going to be over the North Carolina Tar Heels, a team that finished at 8-4 last season. Overall, an outstanding season for North Carolina, and this team has got a tremendous amount of potential going into the 2021 season. And why that is what we're going over here today. We're also going over a few players that North Carolina will be losing, who they're going to be returning, and also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with the previous 6 games for the Tar Heels. And this team was 8-4 overall, and even though the record kind of looks mediocre at first, like this North Carolina team, they did not really have much of a non-conference schedule, so this team really had a pretty difficult schedule, but overall this team played outstanding through it. They beat Duke 56-24, beat Wake Forest in a scary shootout game there. 59-53 was the final score. They did lose to Notre Dame. 17-31 was the final score in that matchup, but then again, Notre Dame did make it to the College Football Playoff, so that wasn't a terrible loss there against the Fighting Irish. But they did beat Western Carolina 49-9. They beat Miami 62-26. That was an outstanding win there for North Carolina. Definitely, I'd say that was a signature win of the season for the Tar Heels, beating Miami by a score of 62-26. Very impressive win there. They did lose to Texas A&M 27-41 in their bowl game, which is definitely unfortunate for this team, considering I could have easily seen this team winning that bowl game. But in the end, Texas A&M was too good. They played an outstanding matchup, and North Carolina did keep it close. I mean, it was a 14-point game, but still, it was a pretty close matchup throughout. North Carolina definitely played as well as they possibly could have in that matchup, but still, once again, an outstanding season. They were 8-4 overall. First 6 games they were 4-2, and then in the last 6 they were 4-2 as well. So this team was very consistent over the course of the 2020 season. Looking at roster preview going into next season, you got Sam Howell coming back at quarterback. That's going to be an outstanding return. He put up over 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last season, as well as a 68% completion rate. So Sam Howell is definitely a quarterback to be on the lookout for going into next season. He could easily be a top quarterback in the nation, I really do think. I think in the ACC, Sam Howell is definitely going to be a top 2, top 3 quarterback. He honestly could be the best quarterback in the ACC next season. There's no doubt in my mind that he could do that. But, I mean, definitely, I think he's got a ton of potential moving forward. The only concern for me with Sam Howell going into the next season is the amount of skill players that he's losing around him. You do lose your top running back, Michael Carter. You also lose your second running back in Javonte Williams, both running backs of which who were extremely underrated last season. We saw both these running backs actually combine for over 3,000 yards of offense and 33 touchdowns last season. Javonte Williams had put up 1,400 yards of offense last year with 22 touchdowns, and then Michael Carter on the flip side put up over 1,500 yards. So both running backs had major parts on this team last season, and both of those two are going to be major losses going into next year. As for the receiving core, you lose your top receiver, Dyami Brown. That's going to be a tough loss as well for Sam Howell, no doubt. He put up nearly 1,100 yards last season with 8 touchdowns. You also lose your second wide receiver in Daz Newsome. Don't forget about him as well. He's going to be a tough loss there, as he was the second receiver, but also put up 700 yards and 7 touchdowns last season. As for Kafari Brown, you're going to be returning him. That's definitely going to be a big impact player going to next season. He put up right around 400 yards last season, so he didn't have near as big of an impact as, say, Daz Newsome did. But overall, still an outstanding team coming in for North Carolina. And this team does have plenty of depth, too. Let me remind you, this team has got some good recruiting coming in. And that's going to be major for North Carolina going into the future, is whether or not the recruiting can be good. If the recruiting was not so good, I'd probably say North Carolina has potential to fall off next season. But this team has actually done pretty well in the recruiting category. And they've got some pretty good depth to go around with it. So that being said, looking at your defensive side, that is really where North Carolina looks really good. This team is only losing one main starter on the defensive side with linebacker Surratt. That is your only main loss on the defensive side. This defense is looking outstanding going into next season. Even though the offense is losing a few key skill players, this defense is looking very, very good going to next season. And really, if you look at the ACC, you got Clemson at the top for sure. But as far as it goes for North Carolina in their division, you probably got Miami, and then you got North Carolina. Both teams of which who have got a ton of great potential going into next season. And it's going to be really fun to see who comes out on top between North Carolina and Miami in that division. Because for North Carolina, you're losing plenty of skill players. Miami on the flip side is kind of having a similar situation, but only on the defensive side. The defensive side for Miami, they're losing a decent amount on there. But for North Carolina, they're actually losing a decent amount on the offensive side. So yeah, you are losing starters on both sides here, but North Carolina definitely, if they can find a good running back to replace Javonte Williams or Michael Carter, that will be huge going into next season. Also, this receiving core in general is going to have to be very improved going into next season. But overall, defense once again looks excellent. That's going to be a huge bright spot, I think, for North Carolina next year. Could North Carolina beat Clemson out? That's going to be a huge question that many people are going to be asking here. In the ACC, really, you've got Clemson. Clemson's always been at the top over the past few years. And then you got North Carolina and Miami, I think, going into next season being your main contenders to possibly beat out Clemson. I think Clemson next season, not having Trevor Lawrence, could come to be an impact for Clemson. Of course, they do have Uiagalelei at their quarterback position, which he's got a ton of potential as well. So you don't want to forget about him. But Clemson in general, I do think is beatable this upcoming season. North Carolina and Miami are both going to have to be outstanding if they're going to take down Clemson, but there is a chance that we do see either North Carolina or Miami be able to have potential to take one of these teams or take Clemson down in general. But chances of winning the division, though, that's also a major question for North Carolina. This team in Miami, it's really tough for me right now to predict who's going to be better. I mean, I like D'Eriq King on the Miami side, but I like Sam Howell better. I like Sam Howell as a quarterback better than D'Eriq King, but on the flip side, I mean, I like the offensive skill players a little more on Miami because they're returning such great returning production on the skill players. So for North Carolina here, this team is still returning a ton of talent, but it's just losing those two running backs as well are pretty concerning for me going into next season. But looking at your schedule, though, you start off the season with Virginia Tech on the road, so you do have a road matchup to start off your season. You got Georgia State then, pretty much a guaranteed win there on September 11th. You got Virginia, then Georgia Tech, then Duke, Florida State, and Miami. And so really, I mean, if you look at this first half of your schedule, there really is no major key matchup in that first half. I mean, you got to play Virginia Tech on the road. That could come to be a important matchup possibly, but Virginia Tech, I'm not really expecting a whole lot out of them, so that still will be an important matchup to get the season started with a win. But otherwise, that's definitely the most important game in your first six. As for the bottom half, you got Miami and Notre Dame in back-to-back matchups. That's definitely going to be a pretty tough stretch in through there. Good thing is you do have a bye week between the Miami and the Notre Dame matchups there on October 23rd. So you do not have to play both those opponents back-to-back. But Miami's going to be a tough game. That's going to be definitely, I'd say, the most crucial game of the season for North Carolina. Like Notre Dame, that's going to be important as well. But if North Carolina wants to win the division, like they got to win that Miami game. Whoever wins the Miami-North Carolina game, I can almost guarantee you is going to win the division next season. So that's why that is such a crucial game there, is because whoever wins that game is going to have a chance to beat or a chance to play Clemson in the ACC championship. So that's why that's such an important matchup there. But then you got Wake Forest, you got Pittsburgh, and then you got Wofford, and then NC State to finish out the season. So the second half of your schedule is much tougher than the first half. You got to play Miami, of course, Notre Dame, and then also NC State on the road. So all three of those matchups are going to be pretty difficult. But that being said, looking at the first half here, Virginia Tech, that's going to be a close game. I'd probably favor North Carolina right now just by a little bit, but that could be a tough one there on the road. Georgia State's going to be a win. Virginia's going to be a win. Georgia Tech and Duke. So you got 4 guaranteed wins there in a row. I can guarantee you that you will start out at a 4-1 or a 5-0 record in your first 5 games. Florida State's going to be a close one. Florida State, I think I'd probably favor North Carolina right now as well, but just because, I mean, Florida State could be a sneaky team next season, I will put that as a yellow game for now. So first 6 games, I could easily see North Carolina going 6-0. It would not surprise me a single bit to see this team go undefeated through the early parts of October. But looking at the second half here, you got Miami, of course. That's going to be your crucial game once again. Winner of that game is more than likely going to win the division. So that is the crucial game there in week number 7. Then you got Notre Dame. That's also going to be a tough one there. I'd probably favor Notre Dame right now just slightly in that matchup because North Carolina will be coming off a pretty tough game against Miami. But Notre Dame, I do think will be a close one for now. I'm not projecting a win or a loss. Wake Forest on the 6th of November, that's going to be a win. Pittsburgh is going to be a close one, I think, mainly because it's on the road. And Pittsburgh also does have potential to be good. And then, of course, you got Wofford. That's going to be a win. NC State is going to be a close game as well. So I've got you getting 6 guaranteed wins going to next season. The ceiling is going to be 11-1. Your projection is 10-2. And then the floor, which the floor means kind of the bare minimum of where this team could be next season, is 8-4. So I think for the most part, my projection is 10-2. I could easily see this team going 11-1, though. I think, really, I mean, even if you lose to either Miami or Notre Dame, that puts you at 11-1. So I definitely think 11-1 is possible this upcoming season. 12-0, I considered possibly putting that as the ceiling, but I don't think I'm going to put it as 12-0 for now. just because of some of the uncertainties on the offensive side. But I definitely think 11-1 is your ceiling. You got 10-2 as your projection. And once again, these are just projections. These aren't actual predictions because we're just so early on in the off season. I'd figure it's kind of tough to predict every game right now. So anyway, that being said, projection for North Carolina is 10-2, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below on North Carolina. Let me know your record predictions and all of that down in the comments below. I appreciate you guys all watching though. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I'll see you guys later.